On and off. Some of you have been asking me where some of my favorite sites are. I can tell you where some of my least favorite sites are. Is coming out this mountain most of the time. Very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because they hold tremendous significance, and it's hard to focus, isn't
Yes.
it? With the chaos going on. This is the more popular spot of the Garden of Gethsemane. The church is built on the remains of a Byzantine church in this location. This church, 1926, called the Church of All Nations, a church that was paid for by donations from Christians around the world, hence the name. The windows are small and made out of a dark purple alabaster, so that even on the brightest of days, inside it looks like nighttime. It remembers a nighttime event, a full moon event. The Passover night, after the meal, when Jesus comes to the Garden of Gethsemane and is betrayed by Judas. Yeah? The olive trees are sometimes said to be from the same time period. The local tradition says 2,000 years. Maybe as old as the Crusades, some of them. Maybe. Certainly when Rome took down the city, they chopped everything within miles for wood, for siege equipment, and for the fire. Maybe roots sprung again. If you would ask the trees, are you the original trees? They don't mind saying yes. All right, beyond that we don't know. Beyond that we don't know. After the Last Supper meal, after Judas separates himself, sells of a slave that was gored by an ox. Book of Leviticus, 30 shekels of silver. Jesus comes with his disciples to a place where they would meet often as they go between Bethany and Jerusalem. A garden, meaning a walled-in private area where there are plants, not roses, but plants for domesticate use. Olives, grapevines, pomegranates, growing. The whole valley on the lower slopes, the wetter part of the valley must have been full of similar gardens. This one is called the Garden of the Olive Press. Gethsemane. And so we look for olive trees. Somewhere on the way up is as good as any to remember. Apparently land owned by somebody sympathetic to Jesus' message. We don't know who. And Jesus and his disciples rendezvoused here after the Passover meal. It was dark. It was late. They had 4 cups of wine, a little bit sleepy. If it's a full Passover meal, Seder they have, it's maybe 11 o'clock midnight, the moon would be full and it would be right there. How do I know that? Because on Passover night, the moon is always full, and at 11 o'clock, it's always right there. That follows its season. If it's springtime, it would be getting chilly. The trees would be rustling in the wind. It's a dark, shadowy, tricky light, melodramatic moment, heavy with anticipation. And the disciples fall asleep. The inner circle falls asleep. Jesus feels the weight of the night and the next morning events on him. 10 minutes, quick scrambling, he's over the top. He can go back to Galilee. He can live another day. He can escape the events that he knows are before him. And he wants to. Remember the prayer? It's sweat with blood. Listen. There are folks who would say that because Jesus is divine, he cannot sin, and he doesn't feel the same temptations we do. How does he really know what we're going through? And the answer is, when the Spirit blows where it will. The answer is, when the trouble and the temptation come upon us, we easily fall. And to get Jesus to fall, the temptation, the trouble must have been infinitely more than us. We trip up at the beginning of it, yeah? Infinitely more. And he still said, not my will but yours be done. You know, blood coming out. Not my will but yours be done. Several years ago, we had a student in her early 30s do our summer course. About a year and a half before, her husband had left her for another lady. She was just starting to get over the trauma when she came with us. And at the end of the summer course, a couple of 3 hours, she had made a friend, and they came together to this garden. She had brought her wedding band with her. Now the band had been cut by the unfaithfulness of her husband, right? And she took it off and threw it into the garden. The feeling was the tremendous breakage of her life. Yeah? She was letting the over-encompassing willingness of Jesus to take that from her in the garden. Yeah? I only found out about it because she wrote it in her impression report later. Yeah? All right? So it's supposed to be a valley, a garden, a spot of pressure, of intense suffering, but yet taking others on you. Yeah? Okay, go inside a bit. I'll meet you back in that corner outside.